There's no shortage of hotel sales tactics, from the turn and burn to the gentle nurturer and everything in between. Sales manager versus the trusted advisor. Who takes home the gold? I've invited hospitality consultant Kristi White on to explore this topic further. I've asked her questions like, what are the main differences between the two? Which is better and why? And what are some of her best tips on selling more? If you're in hotel sales, you're not going to want to miss this one. Check it out. Kristi, thanks for joining me. We're going to talk about sales manager versus the trusted advisor. Who sells more? Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, those are good words. Lots of good words there.
Thank you. Let's start with the obvious. What are the main differences between the two? Can you share that with us?
Yeah, so for me, I think there are a couple of differentiators in this. So I'm going to parse those words just a little bit. So for me, the sales manager is just an order taker. They just take the business if it will book and move on. They're truly the order takers, the turn and burns. And there isn't a thought as to, should I take that piece of business? They're all business, dates, rates, and space. And it's a binary thing. The customer either says yes or they don't say yes. And then they move on to the next thing. And there's no thought about where that piece of business could go long term. A trusted advisor type seller, and I actually prefer to think of them as consultative sellers, is more thoughtful in their process, and they get to know that customer and, more importantly, their customer's business. And this allows them to guide that customer through the process. This type of seller is the one who has raving customers who follow them to the ends of the earth. And there's the difference. The sales manager will close business, but it's only business that walks in the door. They don't typically grow the business. It's what's in front of them. You said that earlier, and damn the consequences. The trusted advisor is more thoughtful and will turn away business if it's not the right fit for both the customer and the entity that they're selling for. As a result of this, they grow the business and end up with a portfolio of loyal repeat customers. And that's the difference. Sales manager is a turn and burn, and they're never going to talk to that customer again. And that trusted advisor nourishes and nurtures that account until they're getting the lion's share of the business that is appropriate for both entities.
I love that. I'm going to add just a little bit of that. Fantastic description. I often think of sales managers is they're looking out for themselves. Right? It's self-serving first, not necessarily customer second. And it's that whole adage, which always irritated me, always be closing, which is...
Oh my God. I can't believe I didn't visibly flinch, because I've worked with a couple of salespeople that would sign off their internal emails, A, B, C, and there's some PTSD involved with that always be closing mentality.
Oh my gosh. Versus what you just described. That trusted advisor, somebody that educates, inspires, and I dropped this word, I can't use it enough this week, the word trust. It is the new currency in sales. So hard to build, easy to dissolve,
easy to break,
take away, right? And
well, I mean, if you think about it, if you're being sold to, and you get sold to all the time, I do too.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm talking to someone and maybe I'm really hot, I want to book this, I want to sell, I want to buy this, I want to buy this. And that salesperson turns around and says, look, I've asked you all these questions. I don't think we're the right fit for you. I think we're going to create some dissonance between your constituency and my hotel. And that's not what I want for us as a relationship. I actually think you need to take this meeting over to XYZ hotel. But when you have that other meeting we talked about, I'm expecting you back here.
Exactly.
The person that is willing to turn away a piece of business because they don't want to disappoint the customer is, to me, the more valued salesperson. And as a buyer, it's the salesperson I'm coming back to every time.
Exactly. And
the sellers know it.
Yes, exactly. Now think about this as well. Think about that action that attribution software can't track, right? It's not going to show up on your P&L statement. But imagine that same prospect said, oh my gosh, Kristi, she literally referred me to somebody else, not even our hotel, because she kept me in her best interest. She tells her colleague tells her. Right. Suddenly, you've got word of mouth referrals coming to you which is now considered dark social, because these are conversations and actions and DMs taking place, chats taking place that aren't tracked. That all adds to those opportunities come to you. And I think a lot of people because it doesn't show up, it's not obvious, it's happening, that there's not enough attention pointed out.
And
Right?
I would add, and this came, you and I both commented on Tammy Gillis's post on LinkedIn earlier today, as a matter of fact, about price being the selling point.
Yep.
A sales manager is always going to compete on price. It's the only arrow in their quiver. A trusted advisor, that consultative seller, price is the very last conversation that they have, because they've created value with their customers. And at that point, the customer's like, I don't really care what you're charging, because you've created value for me. So just drop whatever the price is in and we'll sign that. There's the other thing. So a consultative seller is ultimately going to end up making you more money, because it's no longer a conversation about price.
I love that. Now, our last conversation, I reached out to you because I saw some of your content. One of the best articles I've ever seen on LinkedIn, The Rise of the Non-Professional Meeting Planner. It's come up literally in my LinkedIn Live event that I had. All my clients, I asked the same questions. Hey, are you having people reach out and ask even the basic questions? What's attrition, food and beverage minimums? And they're all like, yeah, we are actually having basic conversations. Some of these people, and I think I mentioned before, I qualified that from one of our clients, 85% of the business are coming from non-traditional meeting planners. That's way more than I thought. That trusted advisor, that handholding is now way more valuable to that segment versus your bona fide meeting planner, because they're a little bit more seasoned. They can see, they don't necessarily need a lot of that handholding. So I'm assuming you would agree this, and I think we're kind of arguing that how the trusted advisor is becoming a little bit more golden. How do you think that adds to the value of the trusted advisor with somebody that doesn't have experience?
I think it adds to it tremendously, because you can walk them through the process and help them understand why they want to take this route versus taking that route. And I think it's going to become even more incumbent as instant booking for more than guest rooms in group, but also meeting space meets in the middle and becomes a reality, because you're going to have little Susie out there booking her bi-weekly staff meeting off-site online now. And if you know, because you've developed a relationship with little Susie, and you know that this is her part-time off the side of her desk gig, and she comes in and she books 6 of those meetings, and you're looking through those meetings and you go, oh, hang on, she left that afternoon break off on meeting number 4. And you pick up the phone and call her and say, hey, Susie, I saw that you booked your next 6, staff meetings. On week number 4, you left off the afternoon meeting. Was that planned or an accident? And little Susie says, oh my God, it was totally not planned. I just was doing this in the 5 minutes I had spare today and I missed it. Can you please add that for me? Now, suddenly you've added even more value to it, because you got to know that customer. And also through this, that can also start putting some of those other little Susies into your Insta booking process and taking those smaller meetings off the plates of our sellers and keeping them focused on the big fish. Because we've said this before, it takes as much time to book that 15, 20 person meeting as it does to book that 150, 200 person meeting. If the customer is willing to do it themselves, you can provide good service on the back end of it, not in the front end of it where all the paperwork is. So that's where I think a good consultative seller can take that and turn that into bigger opportunities.
That's fantastic. Let's do quick contrast and compare, right? For somebody that's a traditional sales manager versus the trusted advisor, what would be the benefits of staying in that sales manager role versus considering a trusted advisor strategy? I'd love to hear just a quick pros and cons on each.
Well, I think it comes down to how the organization that you work for is incenting. And I think that's something that needs to be realized in our industry. We do not do a good job. We incent the wrong things. Mm-hmm. We incent close rate, which we know can be gamed through a CRM very easily. Mm-hmm. So we've got to learn how to incent people. And here's the fact is some people that's all they're ever going to be good at is order taking, and they thrive there. And we've got to start thinking about, can everyone become a consultative seller? Because that is a very, very specific goal and a very specific skill set. So, maybe someone can come in as an order taker and move into it, but they have to have that initiative to want to spend time with that customer, do the research. Tammy was talking about that in her post about not dialing for dollars. These are people who are willing to investigate a company, understand where they've stayed in the past, what they're doing, and go have those longer conversations. But the person who needs to just get a signature on a contract, that is probably not the mentality for them. And I do believe that you need both of these types of people in your organization because there's a time and place for each of them.
Sure.
You know, as we were recovering from COVID, turning and burning was probably not a bad thing because you got bills to pay, man.
Right.
But, you know, as we even into out of recovery back into a more steady state, you do need those consultatives because they're the ones that go find future business and get that on the book and dig into an account and go, well, I know Susie, and Susie's going to introduce me to Janet, and Janet's going to introduce me to Margie, and Margie's going to introduce me to Meredith. And that's how I'm going to now get 12 meetings and not just the 2 meetings that Susie books. And that's what a consultative seller. So you've got to have someone who's willing to roll up their sleeves and do some detective work. I always joke that these people are probably stalkers in their spare time because they're going to learn stuff that you never even knew that they knew. These are the people that know people's birth dates and the kids' birth dates and what their favorite drink on Friday afternoon is. And sometimes they're donut dollies and they drop by with the six pack of Zima, real world scenario, by the way, for little Susie on Friday afternoon and say, hey, the first 6 are on me. And that is that space that you have to be in. And it's hard to do. So, you know, you got to think about that if that's your career path. If you get off on just signing contracts, you need to stay over in your sales manager lane. But if that long-term growth and finding new business is where you are, then go into that and start your little mini detective stalking agency.
Yeah, no, wonderful. And I'm assuming in terms of like you mentioned, long-term revenue sustainability, once you built that trust and you built it through that consultative, being that trusted advisor, I'm assuming retentions are better, right? Versus getting back to what we just talked about, not being your value proposition is price. You know, once
Yes.
you've gone down that rabbit hole, now there is zero loyalty. The loyalty is, hey, can you deliver the best rate possible? And if not, I'm just going to move on. Once you, right?
Well, and you get into that and think about it through the RFP process. If that's your only contact with that customer is when you're responding to the RFP, all you're ever doing is competing on price. Whoever gets it in fastest and whoever has the best price. That is how you're competing. Whereas if you've built the relationship and hey, maybe they're sending out an RFP because their company requires them to get 3 bids. Some of the big GMOs, that's what they require. But they're going to pick you because they're dropping something in the RFP that your hotel is the only one that can do that. But you're only going to get that type of support if you've got that relationship functionally going into it. And the way I kind of look at it is sales managers think of business as one and done. They've booked it, they've signed it, they've turned it off to someone to service, and then they move on to the next one, book it, sign it, turn it over. Consultative sellers think of everything as a window of opportunity opening. So to balance everything, you do have to have both of them.
That's interesting. Has anybody done an illustration based on when you have recurring revenue? Because I'm just in the agency space, project work versus reoccurring revenue and retainer work. Once you have an ongoing relationship with the client, it's so much easier to maintain revenue models versus it's exhausting looking for new business all the time.
It is. And I think, again, I'm going to go back to that SaaS model. I think the SaaS business does it because they look at revenue from a monthly recurring revenue and revenue share. And I don't think that we do that in the industry. No one's really tracking. I mean, some like Demand 360 and Agency 360, they give you what your revenue opportunity is. But then if you turn that back and look at the account as a whole, not just from a BT, but from a group perspective, and what percentage of their business are you functionally getting? No one really tracks that because there's not a cohesive place for all of that. So it would be work, and they would have to functionally look at that. And sometimes the skill set doesn't exist. And it goes back to they're busy and it's a bird in the hand and we don't look a gift horse in the mouth. And there's my metaphors for the day.
What are some of Kristi White's best-selling tips?
You know, it's an interesting thing because I've been looking at RFPs and how we still aren't managing them well.
Mm.
And again, it goes back to we incent on the wrong thing. RFPs need to be responded to within a certain time frame, which sometimes lends itself to all you can do is rate, dates, and space. And you know what? That's not going anywhere anytime soon. They're here to stay, and we can't put that genie back into the bottle. But what we can do is change how we handle the process of RFPs. So hotels need, if you're a big hotel, if you're a little bitty select focus feature property in the middle of the Midwest with 110 rooms, this is maybe not your thing. You probably only got one salesperson on property. But for bigger properties, you've got to have lead catchers that touch every RFP, and they need to be able to quickly evaluate those for a couple of things. The first one is your need over the dates in question, because if you have great need over those particular dates, obviously you're going to respond to that one very quickly versus a date that you're already forecasted to be at 90% and you don't have a lot of space and you're going to have high rates out there.
Right.
Flexibility of the client, if that's even known, because maybe you can move them out of this week into the following week, which is sort of a shoulder period, and everybody wins. You can get them better rates, and you can also fill a hole. And then, is the lead an existing account at your hotel? I talk to hotels and they're like, oh, our repeat business is 75%. And then I ask the next question: is that repeat business because you booked it, or is it repeat business because you just got lucky with the RFP? And we need to redefine what repeat business looks like. If it was little Susie rebooking the same meeting that she did a month ago and she picked up the phone and called your salesperson or booked directly on your website, that is repeat business. If little Susie put it out to RFP and you responded to the RFP and you happened to get it, but 12 other hotels also got the RFP, that wasn't repeat business. That was just business you booked a second time and got lucky. So from there, if you've answered those three questions, and there are probably others, but those are the three big ones. If the lead catcher should respond, and FYI, about 80% of the RFPs most hotels are getting should be responded to by the lead catcher. They shouldn't go to a seller. And we should only pass on those leads where it's a new contact within existing accounts, and the consultative seller can then pick up the banner and flesh that out just a little bit. And then on the other side of it, you've got to have people out there hunting. And that's the lead catcher will free up that time and let the sellers, those consultative sellers, get out there and do their job. And they need a documented plan to hunt for business. It is absolutely imperative that you have an action plan for your top 50 accounts to get more of their business. Have you even done the analysis to see if you recovered to 2019 levels, or did recovery just happen to you? Your documented plan needs to have specific account-based action plans, and these should be for existing customers, target customers, and aspirational customers. Someone in your organization needs to have a clear understanding of the current and future value of customers, both existing and future, and a plan on how you're going to grow their business. And then finally, you're going to marry those two together. The RFP process should be part of the hunting ground, but someone has to manage the noise that only the best opportunities rise to the top. And for that, we're going to have to make some wholesale changes to all of our processes and how we incent our people.
Great stuff. I'm going to add a little bit to there, maybe on the prospecting side from a social selling aspect. I've got 3-4 quick tips I'll add to that. I see a lot of LinkedIn profiles still talking about themselves. LinkedIn is not a glorified resume. I want to shout it. It is your personal landing page. It should be about your prospects. So when they come to your LinkedIn profile, they really don't care, give a rat's behind if you've won awards, what college you went to. They want to know how you can help them first and foremost. So updating your LinkedIn profile to create more of that trusted advisor. Create more of a solution-based profile. And God forbid, omit the word sales in it. Be more of a person that's there to help solve problems. I wanted to underscore is the importance of social proof. We're obsessed with TripAdvisor and Yelp on the leisure side.
Yep.
Completely forgotten on the group and event side. Personally, I want to see more reviews. You're talking about a much more higher price sale. So many things could go wrong. It could personally put you in a bad situation if something goes sideways at your meeting event. I want to know if I've never met this person, I don't have any trust. I'm going to go look. I want to see testimonials. I want to see reviews. What other events have they hosted that went well?
Yep.
I see nothing on that. So quick gold standard is video testimonials, and at the very least, some written, and be able to showcase, have them in an area where you can include those in some of your prospecting. This is a biggie, is first party data, touching your data, your list once a month with value, whatever list it is. And I know a lot of it's manual, which I still, getting back to your comments about SaaS, for the life of me, I don't understand why some, Amadeus and a few others, don't have automation set up based on triggers or values. It's so easy to set up monthly value emails that look like they're coming directly from the salesperson. Just a reminder, hey, I'm here. We just crafted this recent blog post of the 5 hottest trends. Just thought I'd share it with you. Wanted to get your thoughts. No sales at all, just value. Once a month. That alone has been a huge game changer for our teams.
I think we've forgotten how to do the polite email that is not about selling. It's just that checking in on you.
Yeah.
How are you doing? La 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 la. And either we never knew how to do it, and I think older salespeople, and I would count myself in that bucket, we came up that way, so we knew how to do that. But when everyone, I liken it to fast food. If you've never been taught how to have those casual conversations where it's not about selling, it's you drive up to the clown space, you yell into it, and when you get to the window, the order is right, and we deem that good service. And we have forgotten. I think you and I talked about this the last time we talked about that training of making sure everyone understands how to have those conversations, because it is a Snapchat world. And that is unfortunately how too many people communicate, is in that 120 characters, and it's the abbreviated conversations. And when you to truly understand and appreciate your customers and what their needs are, you're going to have to go beyond the 120 characters. It's 240 these days, but you're going to have to go beyond that and have some more meaningful conversations. We need to make sure our sellers know how to have those conversations if we want them to be successful. And that starts with how we onboard how we onboard our employees, and teaching them the values of what we want them to know.
Good point. I would also say that frequency is key. What's changed between when you and I were in college versus now is this little device right here. Our attention span is whittled down to nothing, where staying top of mind, see, and this is the whole thing about trusted advisor. You got to be in the feed. You got to be in the feed. You can be top of mind. So when those opportunities come up, it's like, oh my God, Kristi White, she was just talking about X, Y, and Z. She's the person I need to reach out to. That's the key pivotal point. But now you can't send just a message and be on LinkedIn every 3 months, because you're forgotten so quickly. That's the dynamic that's changed so much, is the saturation of the communication messages that we're seeing. We just forget so much. Got to be more active. And I think, and more personalized. So that's where I think, in fact, I'd love to have conversations on how to be personal, using technology to touch high level and letting technology do the work.
I mean, there's so much, because you can do a video message that's quick and to the point and gets that across. There's so many different ways, and I just don't think we've embraced. Our industry has not embraced the technology as a general rule. We're a very risk averse industry in general. No one wants to be the first guy that goes and does it. Whereas everywhere else you go, everybody wants to be the first one, because, everyone remembers Neil Armstrong. Does anyone remember that next guy?
Right.
That's where you want to be. And we are not a Neil Armstrong taking that first small step for mankind, or small step and huge step thing for mankind. I'm going to blow that one up, but you got the gist.
Yes.
That's not who we are as an industry. And I think we've still got so many people who are, well, that's not how our customers act. Well, we don't know what we don't know. And there's some good A/B testing that can be done there. And by the way, most sales and catering systems have some kind of triggers that can be used, but that all gets turned off because someone doesn't want to have those traces sitting in their inbox. So they end up turning them all off, and it doesn't happen.
Interesting. Kristi, where can people find you? And what are you doing right now, by the way?
Well, so most days you can find me sitting at my desk, happily culling through databases, creating new and interesting metrics for my customers. I have been happily consulting and helping hotels better understand if they recovered or did recovery happen to them. Spoiler alert, recovery happened to them. And you can find me on LinkedIn anytime you want to reach out to me there. As you well know, I respond super fast. And
you do.
because I am on LinkedIn continuously,
Yes.
and that's what I'm working on is helping some customers understand, have they recovered or did recovery sort of happen to them? And then I'm working with some other customers on space utilization and how they're utilizing that space, and if they're utilizing it effectively and how they can utilize it to make more money in the future.
Awesome. Love it. Just like last time, amazing conversation. Thank you so much for coming on the Instinct Show.
Thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh. I definitely can't wait to have our next conversation. Thanks, Kristi.
I look forward to it.